Hello everybody, in today's video I'm talking about buying land in the state of Arizona, and I'm going to talk about three things in this video. First thing is about common myths that I always encounter about buying land, and the second is the most important considerations that you need to know about if you're thinking about buying land in the state of Arizona. And number three is I'm going to just explore 5 or 6 of the towns that I often sell in, and I'm going to compare prices so you have an idea of what it might cost to buy land in the state of Arizona. The channel is Living in Northern Arizona, where I post videos every single week about living in the Northern Arizona towns. My name is Dawn Dickinson. I am a realtor in the state of Arizona, so if you ever have a question about buying or selling real estate, my contact information is always in the description below, and you can give me a call, text, email, and I will get back to you. So I'm going to start by talking about the 3 most common myths that I encounter when people call me and they're thinking about buying land in Arizona. And the very top myth that I encounter is that land is still cheap here in Arizona. People still think it's the wild, wild west, and things have really changed. Land prices have become pretty high, probably way more than you're expecting. I know my parents did buy a lot in Gilbert in about 1978 for like $10,000, $11,000, 1978, right? And they bought maybe the lot that we built the Mormon Lake cabin on, in maybe an acre of land there was about $40,000 back in the late 1980s. So again, cheap land is you're not gonna find it in Arizona in any place close to town or where you have a lot of people wanting to live. Now you can find cheap land way in the outskirts of town. In fact, let me tell you, the areas you're most likely gonna find cheap land would be in Williams, way out towards the Grand Canyon, perhaps Winslow. You can find cheap stuff in Winslow, maybe Rimrock, Seligman, and Ashford, again, way, way out in the middle of town. And again, those lots are probably not going to have any utilities, no water, no electricity, and no hope of getting water or electricity anytime soon. Now, that doesn't mean you could not get a water haul service. That's very common in some of these rural areas. You can also get solar panels, and that will work. But if you're asking, you must have utilities and you must have water, probably not going to get it for cheap. Now, other areas you might consider would be Tucson. I do not sell in Tucson, but Tucson, south of Tucson, I don't sell there, but I suspect you might find some cheap land out that way. Maybe if you're in the valley out towards Florence, you might find stuff. And then, of course, there's some places like Skull Valley, Yarnell, Kirkland. I will not go there, okay? Please do not ask me to drive to Kirkland or Yarnell or Skull Valley for any reason. In fact, if you are interested in buying land, you do not need your real estate agent to attend a showing for land, unless, of course, there are special restrictions or maybe there's a gate code. But I can send you a list of properties and you can go out and drive and check out the land yourself and then call me back later with questions. So again, the big #1 myth is that land is cheap and it's the Wild West. Land is not cheap, and if you stay tuned to the end of the video, you're going to see what I'm talking about, because I'm going to give you some actual prices for lots listed for sale. #2 myth is that land prices will always go up, and while that is for the most part true, prices on land and homes do go up over time. We do experience these fluctuations and dips that happen periodically, as of course you can remember in 2008 or so, where prices for everything dipped. Some people are thinking we're heading for a housing price crash right now. I don't think that is going to happen, and many of the experts do not think that's going to happen in the next 2 years, but we don't have crystal balls. I cannot guarantee that land prices or home prices will always go up if you buy them. So while it's a pretty good bet, and if you're looking to build a few years down the road, it wouldn't hurt you to start looking now. But there's nobody that can guarantee that land prices are always going to go up. And if somebody guarantees that, I would be very suspicious unless they are a great, reputable psychic. So #3 myth is that if you're buying a land or a lot and there's no HOE, that means you can do anything you want and there are no build restrictions. That's not true. While it is more likely if there's no HOA HOA. There are no restrictions of any kind. You do need to check and see if there are any recorded CC&Rs, which are the restrictions that are recorded against that lot. Now, one thing that's true is if there's no HOA, it's harder for the homeowners to enforce the restrictions recorded against the lot. You have to get together as a community and hire a lawyer in order to enforce some of the restrictions. If somebody's putting up, say, a mobile home in an area that's restricted, or parking their camper and planning to live in their camper in a lot where that's restricted, if there's no HOA, it's harder for the residents to enforce that. But just because there's no HOA doesn't mean there are no restrictions. And I also have people call me up and say, I want a lot that has no restrictions. Please send me a list. I can't do that either because there's no place on any of the local MLSs that I subscribe to in Arizona where there is a field that says, are there CC&Rs? So what we have to do is I send you a list. If you see something interesting, I can check to see if they've been attached to listing. Probably not. Most agents don't do that. I can call the listing agents and say, do you have any CC&Rs for me? A lot of times they don't. Now, if I'm listing land, I will, before I list it, I will call the title agency if the owners don't have it and get the CC&Rs, which are the restrictions, right? And you can often get them from the listing agent. And if you can't find them there, I would try calling a title company to do a search and possibly the county. So those are the three myths, basically. That land is cheap in Arizona. It's not. You're going to find that out in a minute. That land will always go up. Nobody can guarantee that. And the third myth is if there is no HOA, that means it is a free-for-all for what you can build. So keep that in mind. Now, second part of the video, I want to tell you what the top considerations should be when you're looking for buying land in the state of Arizona. Okay, number one, top consideration for land, real estate, property, housing is always location. Are you in a good location? Are you in a good, safe place? Is it a place where people want to be? Is it a place that you will get your bang for your buck because you're living in a good location? If you are buying one of these lots way out in Williams, close to the Grand Canyon, it might be nice to look at, but it's pretty far out there. And if you have to drive 2 hours to get to anything that people want to do, that really makes the location less desirable, and that would be why you might find lots listed for $15,000. So location, it doesn't have to be right inside a hustling, bustling metropolis, but if you are close to where people want to be, like maybe you're in the outskirts of town, but it's a nice town, it would be worth it. If you're way out in the middle of the desert or way out in the middle of the woods, it might not be worth it even if you're getting a piece of property for very cheap. The second, of course, and these aren't in order, but you have to consider the slope of the lot, right? If you've got a lot that's fairly level, easy to build, that will reduce your building cost, that will make the land more valuable. I have seen lots here in Sedona and Flagstaff where it's very, very large slope and you're going to have to come and do some movement of dirt, and that's going to cost you quite a bit. It's going to make your construction last longer. So slope, also, is it like rock hard dirt that they're going to have to dynamite blast to level it out? So slope, you know, rockiness of the soil, that type of thing. The slope of the lot is probably less important than if there are utilities available in the area. So utilities, the most important thing is if there is water, if there is city water, private water company, shared well, private well, that sort of thing, the availability of water. And if there is not water, is it an area that you're considering getting a well? Do they have to drill very deep to create a well for you? Or is there water delivery services in the area? So water important, and then electricity. Now, if there's no electricity in the area, some communities like Stoneman Lake and some of the outside parts of Flagstaff will have solar panels where they will put solar panels on the house, and then they will charge these battery packs that are like car batteries. They might have like 24 car batteries, solar panels charge the back. I know there are some new things that Tesla has put out as charging stations that I don't know anything about. You'd have to look into that, but that's another option for utilities. But if you have water and electricity, that is going to make the price of your land more expensive because it makes it much easier for you to live. Now, some people like the off-grid, and actually it's quite nice. It just makes it a little bit more difficult, more things for you to consider when you're building. But utilities, probably the second most important thing outside of the location of the lot. Now, restrictions, again, we were talking about deed restrictions, CC&Rs, that will change, and there are going to be restrictions like the type of home you can build, the size of the home you could build, zoning, can you have farm animals, can you have horses, use, can you rent out an outbuilding, how many outbuildings can you have, those type of restrictions. Now, if you have questions about zoning and restrictions, what I suggest you do, if it's not obvious on the listing, you could talk or have your agent call the listing agent, but you're going to be better off to call the county directly. And the reason I like to send people directly to the county is if I call the county for you, which I often have done, and ask about zoning or restrictions, now the person at the county is telling me, and now I have to tell it to you. So now you're going to lose a little bit if the interpretation, and if I misinterpret what the county tells me, or if you misinterpret what I tell you that the county told me, there could be some confusion. And rather than have that confusion, I would rather you call the county directly when you have questions on zoning or use or animals or types of building restrictions, that type of thing. So call the county directing when it comes to those types of restrictions. So another thing to consider when you're buying land would be flood status. Now, there are some homes, like if you have a lot on 2 acres and there's a stream at the very back end of the lot, that may show up as a flood zone, but maybe it's not going to impact your building because it's a different part of the lot. But flood status is something to consider when you're looking for land. The other thing is view. Here where I live in Sedona, it can make a huge difference in the price of the property if you have a view, especially if you have a landmark view of some place like Cathedral Rock, or if you have no view at all, that could impact the price. And of course, vegetation. If you're looking in Flagstaff, you want a lot with big, beautiful ponderosa pine trees. That's going to make your land more expensive and more valuable. And finally, is there access? Is there access in the wintertime? Is it landlocked? Do you have to go to a shared driveway with your neighbors to get to your lot? Or any of those access questions. The other thing is if there is a private road. Private roads are okay. It's better if you have a private road maintenance agreement, because once you build your property, if it's on a private road, some lenders will require a private road maintenance agreement for the loan. So again, private roads, okay. You just have to have have to consider a private road maintenance agreement if you are going to finance the property after you build your home on that. So those are the types of things that you need to consider here in the state of Arizona. Probably other restrictions in other parts of the country, but I wanted to put those top considerations if you're buying in the state of Arizona. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go through some of the areas where I sell land, and I do sell mostly homes that are already built, but occasionally I do sell land. And in fact, I have 2 beautiful parcels listed in Flagstaff, Arizona that are a little bit on the outskirts of town, off-grid, about 1.2 acres, both for very good deals. One's for $99,000, one's for $115,000, and again, 1.2 acres, Flagstaff, but about 7 miles off of Forest Highway 3, Lake Mary Road. If you're interested in something like that, contact me. And I'm going to go through, though, some of the land for sale. I'm going to start in Sedona because I live in Sedona. So I just this morning took a little search on the MLS, and because there are so many options, I restricted it to land that is under 1 acre. So starting in Sedona, under 1 acre, and I didn't put any other restrictions except it has to be residential, not commercial. There were 67 lots for sale. The very cheapest one was $149,000, not far from where I live in Village of Oak Creek. That one might have a flood insurance requirement, but again, there were 67 lots for sale, 8 of them listed in Sedona for under $200,000. The total of 67, the highest price lot under 1 acre, was almost a full acre at $1.2 million. And again, the kind of things that you're considering in Sedona, the view is big, the slope is big, vegetation, that sort of thing. So if you're looking in Sedona, and you can see the map where those lots are located, 67 lots, a lot of them going to be about 1/4 to 1/3 of the acre. Okay, so let's move next to Cottonwood. I do sell in Cottonwood quite often. It's a neighboring town to Sedona. It's in Verde Valley, and I'm looking again at only residential lots under 1 acre. There are 11 lots for sale right now that are active or pending. The cheapest lot in Cottonwood is about 0.4 acres at $24,000. There are 9 lots listed for sale under $100,000, so that's pretty good. The most expensive lot in Cottonwood right now is 0.44 acres, so almost half an acre, $275,000. But what's really nice about this lot is it has a garage and a workshop, and it's partially fenced. So if you're curious about that lot in Cottonwood or any of those lots in Sedona, you could give me a call or a text or an email, and I will get back to you. Now let's go over to Flagstaff. Now, as I was saying, I do have myself 2 lots listed for sale in Flagstaff that are about 1.2 acres at $100,000, but they are off-grid, a little bit out of town, but in a beautiful wooded area. It's a beautiful meadow within a wooded area. So in Flagstaff, there are 25 lots for sale that are under 1 acre. And the cheapest one is in Mountain Air for $150,000. It is slightly sloped. That one might be pending already. There are 2 lots in Flagstaff under $100,000. Those are both pending. The cheapest active lot is $229,000, and there are 2 expensive lots for about $1.15 million. Those are about half an acre in Pine Canyon. Now, that's just to give you an idea of what lots sell for in Flagstaff. Now, if you want to go to Gilbert, the reason I'm going to Gilbert is because it's for comparison's sake. This is in the Valley of the Sun. I grew up in Gilbert. There are 5 lots that are less than an acre. There's the cheapest one for sale is about $80,000. 0.4 acres for $79,000. There is the most expensive one at 0.84 acres for $850,000 in Gilbert, Arizona. Now again, Gilbert, I grew up in Gilbert, but it's gotten quite huge. There's not a lot of land left for sale, and I'll just tell you, there's one for $80,000, one for $550,000, $625,000, $690,000, and $850,000. Most of those are between half an acre and 0.85 acres. Now, if you want to go to Williams, Williams is one of the areas where you could get some pretty cheap land, but a lot of these are going to be in the area between Williams and the Grand Canyon, out towards the Grand Canyon, and there's no utilities there. So the cheapest one in Williams is $15,000. That's extremely cheap. Again, going to be out at the Grand Canyon, going to be no utilities in the middle of the high desert, and there are 27 lots for sale in Williams. 15 of them are less than $100,000. The most expensive lot in Williams is $249,000 for about 0.6 acres. But again, Williams is going to be one of the areas where you're going to be it's very largely spread out geographically, and most of the cheap lots in Williams are going to be towards the Grand Canyon with no utilities. Now let's look in Prescott Valley, a very nice area south of Verde Valley, just on the other side of Mingus Mountains, but north of Bradshaw Mountains. There are 10 lots for sale under an acre in Prescott Valley. The cheapest one, $35,000, and the most expensive one, $175,000. And there are 9 lots in Prescott Valley area that are under $100,000. 10 lots right now in Prescott Valley area for sale. So I hope that gives you a better idea of how much you might expect to pay if you buy land in Arizona. Again, places like Sedona, very expensive. Prescott, pretty expensive. Flagstaff, extremely expensive to buy land. The channel is Living in Northern Arizona, where I post videos every single week about living in the Northern Arizona towns. My name is Dawn Dickinson. I am a realtor in the state of Arizona, so if you ever have a question about buying or selling real estate, my contact information is always in the description below, and you can give me a call, text, email, and I will get back to you.